Hey guys, and welcome back to Arcane Assist with our mini-series on Answers to Ghost Fleet. This week, we have still Denny1.
Yep, still the Deneghra one, still Ghost Fleet. Exactly the same list I've played every single of the last 3 weeks. Again, if this is a series you think is interesting or you appreciate us doing it, let us know. It's a bit of a deeper dive on something. I know it means we get to showcase a little bit less, but I thought we wanted to explore something and lend a little bit of authority to it because this is, of course, a list with which I have won 2 fairly large events.
And it's against an Issyria list that myself and Tim kind of cooked up together on a 14-hour car ride.
Yep, this is on the drive back to Muson Con that we came up with an Issyria Shadows list with what I think are quite a few answers to Ghost Fleet. The flex in this is with the release of Chimera, you could probably swap out the 2 Chimeras for Chimera, but I think the core of the list is it's 2 units of Strike Force with attachments, which gives you 2 free solos.
Yep.
Those being Iris 1 and Narn for 13 free points.
Which is pretty rad.
Yeah.
You also get, in the Shadows of the Retribution tier, theme. Sorry, Trevor. Theme.
Also Travis, he'll be mad as well.
Yeah. +1 to go first, which kind of cancels out the Ghost Fleet +1 to go first, because Denny really likes going first. So
correct.
That happening less of the time is a good thing. She still won this roll, but
yep, she won
screw
this
her.
roll, so I'm going first.
And takedown on melee attacks,
also
which is just as beneficial as it is in Band of Heroes.
Correct. And Mage Hunter Strike Force are no slouch in melee.
Also, they all have stealth, which is pretty effective against Denny's Scourges and Crippling Grasps.
Issyria herself has Arcane Vortex.
That too. And the feat for True Sight helps ignore both Denny's stealth as well as the Stalkers.
We talked a little bit in the Zol game we played. If you haven't seen that, check it out. We talked a little bit in that game about how pressuring Deneghra can be really powerful. And Issyria's feat really does that.
And last but not least, the Hyperion's Gun has Critical Consume, which RFPs in a large AoE, and you can fire it twice a turn thanks to Issyria, and the critical is actually super reliable on her feat turn.
Yeah, because you've got that additional die and you drop the one of your choice.
So that's about it for the tech.
Additional tech, obviously Blinding Light, we didn't even mention.
Yes.
Yeah, Blinding Light denies the ability to make ranged attacks, which is a really big deal, and because of the way that an effect works on a unit, if the unit models are returned to the maintenance phase, they're still affected by Blinding Light.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's the tech the list has against Ghost Fleet, and now we're about ready to hop into the game.
All right, so as the first player, Deneghra's got a pretty aggressive start here. I allocate nothing, power up all of my jacks. I'm hoping to bait first turn feat by sticking a couple of jacks in scenarios. I want to ideally lose 2 Stalkers, remove Issyria's feat, and be able to play a grindy attrition game. So that's my hope. So the Blackbane's Apparate. I'm mostly going to stick incorporeal stuff across here because it's hard for him to remove. I'm going to stick a Stalker up in the forest here. It's got stealth, but Evan is fully capable of ignoring that on his feat turn. I'm just hoping he feats to kill 2 Stalkers. That's my ambition, because the Strike Force are really, really good at doing that with the Jack Hunter advantage, but he probably needs the feat and or an aiming bonus to do it. So that's basically what they're going to be about.
Yeah, looking at my deployment, I actually feel like I misdeployed in this game, considering the only real magic weapon I have, I deployed completely opposite to all of the incorporeal models you have.
Yep. Deneghra ran right up the middle of the board, trying to apply a lot of pressure, use that line of sight blocking obstruction in front of me. The Strike Force can ignore line of sight if they mini feat, but I'm hoping that full camp plus forcing the mini feat and having them all be outside of aiming range is going to be a big deal for me. I run the Ghost Fleet units, unpack them fairly aggressively, trying to make sure that Hyperion AoE, if Evan were to say run Hyperion and then ancillary attack him, then I'm not going to just lose a whole bunch of guys to an early crit consume, minimizing those AoEs a little bit. And I am going to run all of those units and pass the turn over. I maybe miss a thing here.
So I immediately look to Deneghra and think she's very far up. I might be able to do something
in the matchup.
Oh yeah, we forgot our actual lights that should be on all the time, but this is the second time we've done this. Yay, me and Tim are good at this. So I spend a lot of time at the beginning of my turn thinking of what I should do, because originally when I looked across the table, I thought, I'm going to feat this turn. I'm going to kill 2 Stalkers and an Arc Node, and that one at the bottom will hopefully be opposite as to where Issyria is, so it won't be threatening my caster at the very least. And then I saw Deneghra and how far up she was, and how she was basically just across the table from Iris, and how Iris, being speed 7 and range 12, can probably get a line of sight to her around that obstruction, and my feat will allow her to see through stealth and do the Disruptor Bolt. And if that hits, that really opens up an assassination opportunity for me.
Yeah, that's a really big deal. Iris can't ignore line of sight and Disruptor, but I guess I kind of just looked at that angle a little bit incorrectly, because Evan's totally right. If she walks 7 a little bit non-linearly, and she'll be past that objective and able to get a line onto Deneghra.
Yeah. The other thing I'm looking at, because I'll have to activate my caster before I activate Iris, is whether or not I can run a Chimera in such a way that I can get a Blinding Light onto Deneghra. So we're going to do a bit of proxy basing here.
If you get the Blinding Light, this is a guarantee. This
Yes.
is over.
Because, yeah, Blinding Light knocks her down to a def 14 instead of def 16.
And then your Strike Force need 8s with the feat instead of 10s.
Which is just turns them right on.
Brief consideration. We mentioned before that a variant of this list includes Chimera. Chimera, in the sim situation, if she runs and gets within 5 of Deneghra, marks the target.
Yes.
So-
And makes that Blinding Light 1 cheaper for Issyria.
Yes. Which is a big deal.
Does a lot of good things. So this measurement is if the Mage Hunter moves, then I will be able to... Mage Hunter Assassin, that is. I'll be able to not quite get a Blinding Light on Deneghra. So it's not as good an assassination run as it would have been if that Chimera were to be in range.
Yep.
However, we're still in a decent position if Iris manages to hit this this Disruptor Bolt. And obviously, this Chimera up the side, I'm deciding to run 12 inches to be within 10 inches of a Revenant Guru unit. So I figured if my caster is going to be this far up, I should probably mitigate some of the damage coming my way.
One less rifle CRA, for one thing. Like, it's just that many fewer shots against you.
Mm-hmm.
So Issyria.
So Issyria activates, puts Inviolable Resolve onto the Hyperion, arcs a Blinding Light under her feet into the Revenant crew. I opt to boost. I know 5 under my feet is unlikely to miss, but it's happened before.
Lock up the guarantee.
Exactly.
Yep.
I roll like a 16 or something.
Yeah, it hits.
And I opt not to cast Admonition because I feel like if I'm going to get assassinated, it will be because of guns, not because anything's going to come at me.
So you save a couple Arcane Vortexes to block a Scourge or to block a Parasite.
Exactly. So Iris moves up.
Okay, so this is the sliver of line of sight she has to Deneghra. Again, Deneghra's stealth. Issyria's feat gives faction models true sight. Iris is a partisan. Under the feet, she hits, and she removes all of my focus.
And that makes this really good. She also cranks the damage roll herself and manages to just clock Deneghra for 6.
Yeah. That's a big deal. I got 10 boxes. You still need a bunch of 10s.
So now I need 10. Yeah, I need 10s to hit on Strike Force, which under feet helps a bit. It's not impossible, but it's still not incredibly likely. I rank and file line up Mage Hunters. They walk. They're range 12.
It's a goddamn firing squad, Evan.
It's just a... Remember Raven?
Who?
Well, they mini feet so they can see through that giant obstruction. And they just unload. First one is the leader model. It hits. It does 2 damage. And we're just going to keep going down the line. Not hitting yet, not hitting yet, not hitting yet. That one hit, did 2 more points of damage.
Yep.
We're just chipping away.
Then counting back down. Following along for Evan here. Does a couple more points. Leaves Deneghra on 2 boxes. Last one misses. Okay.
So after the first unit, she's on 2 boxes.
Yep.
We have 11 more shots at this because there is a UA in each unit as well.
10 more cracks at a 10,
and then
1 crack at a 9.
Yeah, and then also Narn has a crossbow.
Yep.
So he can take a shot if he needs to.
So officer first.
However, he doesn't need to because the officer cracks Deneghra for 2 more points. Now we realize this is a fast game.
You know, sometimes it happens like that. I mean, I'm going to acknowledge that there's a bit of a mistake there. Like, obviously, I think I should have observed Iris's position a little bit more aggressively. maybe tried to punish her a little bit for that positioning or ran something to block a bit of line of sight. But that's like one of the elements of this list. The kind of raw power of that Issyria list is the amount that it can punish Deneghra for exposing herself.
Yep.
And one of the core concepts in Ghost Fleet is it's a monster attrition list where one of the most vulnerable parts is your caster.
Yes. Things that can just, again, as we talked about at the beginning of this video, as we talked about in the Zol video, things that can bully Deneghra to have to play safe and be farther back than she wants to be, forces the Ghost Fleet player to be extra careful and unable to just get into those aggressive feat positions that Denny can normally be in without just being able to be unassailed because of stealth or because she's such high defense or because she can just camp a bunch.
Yeah, for sure.
Still get work done because of her feat.
So I think we wanted to take a moment, because this video is a little bit shorter in terms of content, to talk about some answers to the list in general and also to the concept of this little mini-series we've done here. It's been about a month that you guys have been watching us play Ghost Fleet versus something, and I think it's undeniable that the list is powerful, and obviously I've got a lot of games played with it, but we want to know if this is the kind of series, this kind of deep dig into a caster that you appreciate, that kind of talks a little bit more about, how does a meta adapt to a list? I've seen from time to time a lot of commentary on the internet about, like, this thing does very well, how should it be nerfed? Where, as if the implication in the culture of Privateer Press's current game design is that if something's doing well, they should be responsible for it not doing well, not the players being responsible for finding tools to respond to it.
It goes back to a lot of almost video game-esque game design,
Sure.
where you have to at least let something very powerful like Ghost Fleet sit in the meta for a little bit, longer than it has, for sure. I think at this point, it will have been roughly 2 or 3 months since the Sioux, and that's when it started to become popular because obviously you won the damn thing. But
I mean, European players have been playing it for a little bit, and Tom played it a couple of local steamrollers and posted about it. But, I mean, I'm not the first person to play Ghost Fleet ever, but I do think I'm the first person to win a Masters with it.
Yes.
Although, no, sorry, I probably am the first at the Southern Ontario Open Masters, but I think the Italian Masters may have been also won by a Ghost Fleet at the same weekend as Mise-en-Con. So, I mean, it's certainly a thing that is out there.
But getting back to my original point is mostly that you have to let something like this sit in the meta for a while, because it's not that it's too powerful, it's that the meta itself was unprepared for this, and it's just a shock to the system.
Sure.
And once people start bringing answers, Ghost Fleet players are going to have to either bringing an off list that techs for things that tech for Ghost Fleet.
The next level tech.
Exactly. Which just brings a natural shift to the meta and removes things that were problems originally.
Or they have to change their own Ghost Fleet lists to build counterplay in.
Exactly, and that's kind of how a meta naturally shifts. But if you don't allow the meta to settle, and you don't allow players to adapt to the problems that the meta is bringing, and just nerf it, that makes it unsettling to play your game and buy things that are popular.
Yeah, it also... I mean, the point you're alluding to there is that it erodes consumer confidence.
Exactly.
Like, you don't want to go out and buy a bunch of Revenants because you're like, maybe they'll just nerf it. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Will Pagani posted publicly that the things that are on their radar are things where it allows players to not have fun and not participate or engage in the game. And Ghost Fleet is not actively doing that. It is not preventing players from engaging in the game. It's not something I don't believe can be corrected honestly, and it is not currently on their errata radar. Which I think it's illuminating. I mean, that's the kind of concept where maybe it turns out that the list is objectively too powerful and needs to be addressed directly. But before we draw that conclusion, and before design says, okay, we need to fix this, you have to let it play out for a little while. I mean, this list is speaking as a player who played a number of Una 2 games and has now played a number of Ghost Fleet games, this is not as powerful as that list was.
No,
I mean,
it is
just
not.
bringing 10 Griffins and running them at your opponent is much, much more powerful than this is.
This also doesn't pilot itself.
I mean, I won't give no credit to folks like Jeff Everett who won like major events at LVO and stuff with the Scarsfell list with Unatu. I do think you have to also be a competent player, and it's no surprise that the person who actually won that event, Jeff Everett, who won it with Una, is a player whose name we've seen winning major events before. However, I do think this list has a little bit more combined arms nuance to it, as you've seen in a couple of the games so far in the series.
So I think that covers that point fairly well. And I think we want to move on to typical answers you can see on almost a faction-by-faction basis. So I feel like it'd be good to reiterate the top 3 or 4 things you said at the beginning of this series from episode 1 that are good answers to Ghost Fleet. So, Tim, what are those things?
Before I jump too much into that, I should also mention that I did do an episode with the Fully Boosted guys right after the Southern Ontario Open where we talked about faction by faction, all the things that are good answers to it. I stand by much of the stuff that I said already in that podcast, and if you haven't listened to it already, I think it does a good job of talking about exactly what I'm about to say. And I'm going to skip over some of the details that I went over at length with those guys.
All right.
The 3 things that I think are absolutely most essential in responding to Ghost Fleet. First, remove from play. Specifically deep digging RFP effects that can target leader models in the units to remove the effect entirely. Honorable mention to RFP that can just happen generally and en masse, because those things are really, really important. If your strike force can get Crusader's Call and charge and kill all of the rifles, or strip off the front line, lose the first wave of strike force, strip off the next line, that's a powerful enough effect to be worth doing. Second thing you need is a way to keep your caster safe. If you just die to a Scourge, Parasite, knockdown assassination with a bunch of guns, that's a problem. Steady, can't be targeted by spells, Arcane Vortex, stealth of some kind, Sack Pawn, all of those are valuable effects that can keep you alive in the late game. Just a really powerful, really tanky stat line is also pretty good with the ability to camp, but something that's going to make the Deneghra assassination a little bit more challenging. And then the third thing is some amount of magical weapons so that the incorporeal models in the list don't simply run the table. Doesn't have to be a lot. I think people overemphasize magical weapons against Ghost Fleet.
For sure.
But it should be some.
So now let's start just going through on a little bit of a most notable faction by faction basis. What do you think their best answer, if not a good answer, to Ghost Fleet is?
Sure.
So
I'm going to go through these in the War Room order.
Sounds good.
Just in the interest of consistency. Signar. A lot of people recently have been mentioning Siege. I think Siege is something really worth exploring. He's not a caster who's had a lot of play in this edition, but he has access to Explosivo, which is an RFP effect, and it's powerful. It's effective. My application for it has seemed limited, but I feel like he's got some tools that are worth looking at. Some people have said Sloane. She has Dust to Dust, which is an RFP effect.
So Sloane with a Lancer.
Sloane with a Lancer. Yeah, I feel like the Hurricane's too much of a liability and it dies. You'd have to be playing Sloane with a Lancer, or you'd have to be playing a very, very excellent game of Sloane with a Hurricane. I'm not totally sold on that one. My favorite answer remains Kane 1. He has so much deep digging attrition valuation against the list that he's kind of the exception to the rule that you need the RFP. He's not an RFP caster. And he does have a plethora of magical attacks if you're playing him in a list where he has a battle group. But he can protect himself from the assassination with access to stealth from Ace, the mini feat. And he can also apply an enormous amount of infantry clearing pressure. And he's not completely incapable of threatening Deneghra. He still doesn't threaten her as well as Kane 3 does, for example, but he can threaten her. Honorable mention to Kane 3, who with a whole bunch of chargers can kill a lot of stuff and can really, really scare Deneghra.
Mage Sight casters?
I just don't think it's enough for Kane 3. I think he gets bogged down and Deneghra just has to stay out of his threat range. But I'd like to play the list, and I did not get an opportunity to play against Keith in the Masters Finals because he lost his semifinal game on a Kane's unit as a liability assassination run.
So, guys, side tangent.
Tangent on a tangent, yes.
Kane 3 defensive tech. Just pop Watson Ryan in the back of the head with Kane's guns. Just do it. You won't get assassinated because those guys won't be alive to get icy gripped. Just kill them.
Or, in this case, charged by Fianna, overtake into Kane. Oh, sorry, crit pitch into Kane, overtake, kill Kane.
All right. End side tangent. Protectorate of Menoth.
Menoth. So, my favorite answer is Sevi 2. I think he's got a feat that RFPs. It's pretty effective. He's also got Ashes to Ashes, so we can play the late game infantry clearing tool. If your opponents have to expose their leader models, so Sevi can get a pretty good deep digging feat, you can remove all 3 Ghost Fleet tools. Even assuming that your opponent doesn't do that, as the Sevi 2 player, you can remove the rifles, which make the CRAs a lot less compelling. He also has access to Arcane Ward, which makes him not assassinatable. And even if they run a Blackbane next to him and clip him with a Scourge, you have access to the book to protect him, which I think makes him a really, really compelling answer. Resnick 2, a lot of people have mentioned. I don't love Resnick 2 because the enemy models have to be in his feat range, which means Resnick 2 needs to be real far up. That
Lamentation? That helps.
A little bit.
And you definitely have a Devout in that list.
Yeah, so again, much of Menoth has trouble being assassinated because you don't have access to the defensive tech of the Crippling Grasp or the Parasite or the Scourge. In Resnick's case, you can't be Scourge knocked down at all. However, I feel like Deneghra kills Resnick's list, and I think he doesn't get up on attrition early enough because I don't think he gets defeat productively and remove all the leader models effortlessly.
Fair enough.
Also, Thyra. Strong honorable mention to Thyra. She has Silence to Death, which is a melee-based RFP effect, but she also has really good daughters, and she herself can stay safe very, very well via access to stealth. So she's the kind of caster who can come up, let her army do work, personally teleport back. She also has the safety net that is the stealth effect.
And
I like Thyra a lot.
Testament has Dust to Dust.
Testament's a no.
I like Testament.
I mean, for the same reasons that I feel like... Okay. If you can make Testament work for this, tell me about it in the comments.
I want to play this game now. Okay. After Protectorate is Khador.
So my favorite 2 answers in Khador remain the same as before. Sorcerer 2 if you want a dedicated solve, although she's tough to put in a pairing. Butcher 3. Best version of that, in my opinion, is Butcher 3 and Jaws of the Wolf, so you've got the magical gun on Behemoth. But if you can't do that, and you don't have Eliminators with Silence of Death to go kill all those leader models, Butcher 3 also plays pretty nicely in Winterguard Command. He can slice off the front line of the Revenants all game, and he can protect himself from the guns really effectively.
Now, I want to cover a point that a lot of people have been saying. Zerkova 2 is an answer, and I'm not sure either of us really agree with that.
I played that game in the qualifiers for Masters, and he killed 90% of my army on a really solid feat turn, and then 10% of my army came back, and I killed 90% of his army. And then he had a turn, and then 10% of my army came back. And 2 turns later, Zerkova was dead, and the game was over.
Because magic weapons aren't the answer.
Correct.
RFP is the answer.
Now, Zerkova 1 has Grave Door on her gun, so she can actually take control of a leader model. If she can grab a leader model and take control of it, it will die while not in the unit, and you'll remove the ability from the unit. Her feat is pretty strong against the list.
Yep.
She's got access to a Cloud Wall, which is cute. She can protect herself okay. I'd like to see it played, but I feel like Zerkova 1 could be an answer.
She also has Sacred Ward, which is nice.
Yes. No, not being able to be targeted by spells at all is something that both Zerkovas have going for them.
CRYX?
Yeah, no, CRYX has some really good tools, actually. So one of the things that CRYX has is Deneghra 2, who I know everyone on the internet says Deneghra 2 is terrible. I played her in Champions. She's still quite playable. She's actually a really good Ghost Fleet answer. A Ghost Fleet caster. And then she has Hellmouth. Hellmouth is an RFP effect, and it's amazing, and it will just wipe whole units. I've gotten 2 leader models at once with Hellmouth because it sucks things in and then RFPs them all. Hits some of the POW 12. She needs to not dub 1s, even if they're under the Wraith Engine aura to kill them. Like, it's a really excellent answer, and she can stay safe because Ghost Fleet itself doesn't have an enormous number of magical guns. So when she's incorporeal, she can expose herself pretty aggressively. You can also play any of the Hellfire casters who can RFP models with Hellfire, of which there are many in the faction. CRYX has some good solves.
Next up's Retribution. There's, I think, 3 notable mentions here, right?
Shadows as a theme force with almost any caster. Issyria especially, as we just featured in this video today. Ossian. Shatterstorm is a really good spell for it. He's got really good tools.
And Gareth has stealth, has heightened reflexes, so you can avoid getting assassinated pretty handily. Yeah,
I mean, he could play this list, try to stay really safe, and just have his army do some work. One of the things that some people have talked about is playing Alara with infiltrators.
Because they can dig really deep with Ghostly and Boundless Charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like that list because I think Infiltrators are pretty garbage unless you're using them to flank with Virus. But it's a thing. You could give it a go. Let me know how it works.
Convergence.
So Convergence is interesting. One of the things that's really good against a list like this is something like the TEP with a lot of like just blanket clearing. Also, I just don't think Deneghra can assassinate LeConte in the Theme Force. He has access to as many shield guards as you have servitors.
Or Warjacks, for that matter.
And then all the Warjacks. And he can do cute things like protect his jacks that you want to delete with his own shield guards. And like, I don't know, he's a tough matchup. He doesn't have access to any traditional RFP, but he's especially good because he can give his army Dispel on their melee attacks. So even if you crippling grasp him or parasite him setting up for a future assassination turn, he can have it removed by one of his own dudes just tapping him in the back. Mm-hmm. And he can do the same thing for if you debuff any of his pieces. So he's quite resilient to the assassination and can stay in the game for a long period of time. The question is, over the long attrition grind, is he going to be able to hold out not being able to stop the Deathbound effect? And I think the secret to winning that matchup is killing all of the things that can be removed and then playing for the late game. And after Deneghra is defeated, and assuming she can't persistently cycle her debuff spells, she actually has a little bit of trouble cracking armor. So I think he helps with that.
All right, after that, we're getting into the Hordes factions. You've seen Trollbloods twice on the channel against Ghostly.
I do genuinely believe that Band of Heroes is a good answer, especially versions that can hold back and not be assassinated. But I do think it's a list that requires practice and requires a lot of time.
Circle actually has a lot of good answers.
Troll's honorable mention to Gunbjorn because he's an explosive caster and has access to RFP, and he's a turn of full immunity from the ranged attacks associated with the feat.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And cover from the spells, which is pretty good too. Circle. Circle is the best.
Yep.
The best.
Just
Circle, if they become the faction to beat, will absolutely drive Ghostfleet out of the meta because Circle just almost accidentally beats the shit out of this list.
So plenty of casters that just accidentally have Crevasse.
Crevasse is great.
Wormwood.
It's really good on Mosar. It's really good on Baldur 2. There's instances of the Baldur 2 list not doing great into this, and I think it's going to take games both ways. I'm personally quite confident playing Baldur 2 into it, but I've got a lot of Baldur 2 experience.
Yep.
I think he's one of the trickier answers. Wormwood is just going to delete this list.
Oh, yeah.
He gets to Hellmouth probably twice a turn. He's personally almost unassailable. He has a feat of guaranteed unassailability. He's amazing. He's totally fine, and he will just destroy Deneghra.
Yeah.
He also has Eyeless Sight.
Yeah.
So like
that's pretty good.
Yeah, he's gonna be able to just do horrible things to this list.
And
no shortage of magical attacks because you take Pure Bloods in all your lists.
Yeah.
and Mosar
and Wold Weirds
and just all the things.
It's gross.
Cool.
Legion.
Okay, so in Legion, the Sacral Vault is fantastic. You've got a lot of casters who can protect your Sacral Vault well and can do very, very well with your Sacral Vault, and it's capable of killing probably 2, maybe even 3 leader models in a turn in a way that prevents them from being promoted in the units. So that involves taking control of them by spending a soul, and you've now got reloadable shots that you can purchase with souls.
So Legion's solution is mostly in minions.
Yes. However, Thagrosh 1 has Mutagenesis, which is an RFP effect, and he also protects the Sacral Vault pretty well. Saren has Hellfire, which is an RFP effect, and Banishing Ward, so she can protect herself or she can protect her Sacral Vault from debuffing. And then you've also got the Throne, which is so good at infantry clearing that it just tends to be good in this list anyway, and the fact that most of your guns have Eyeless Sight.
Next up is Scorn. Now, I've been thinking about this list a lot because I have to play against you, so I've been considering a lot of different answers, and I've got 4 casters in general that I feel like are decent drops. Zal,
so one of them we've already featured. Obviously, we had Zal too.
We had Zal, where the strategy is basically play a normal game until you just seed your army and assassinate Denny.
Yes. Or, alternatively, force her to have a bad attrition turn on her feet where she doesn't swing as hard as she wants to, and that's already a win against Deneghra.
Hexy 1, I feel like, is a pretty decent drop. You need a lot of guns. I think you have to take it in Winds of Death, and I think you have to make a considerable amount of effort on your feet turn to take out the leader models, and if you don't take out the leader models on your feet turn, you might have problems. because beyond that, you're going to need to obliterate Blackbanes in order to take them off the table, and you're going to need to just play very carefully with Hexeris because he can die to Denny.
Sure can.
Hexeris 2 has a really good game. If he runs his Arc Node pieces, he'll probably have an Archidon or two or a Razor Worm. Just he needs pieces that can get into positions to find leader models, and then he has to scalpel them out with Hellfire. And he has Banishing Ward, so he has a good time of avoiding getting assassinated by Denny.
And you're in a faction that has access to an Animus that prevents knockdown, and a Beast that can remove a solo.
All of these things are good for him. Also, he just has a good amount of infantry clearing thanks to Black Spot. And last but not least, I think it's just because he's a great generalist caster, but Morgul 3. And Morgul 3 has some game into it purely because of Knight's Reflection. And when he puts Knight's Reflection on a unit of Revenant crew, even the models that return to the unit are blinded.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Which means they have to forfeit movement or action. They can't shake it because they're infantry models.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't shoot their guns.
Yes.
And if you can just...
It's a lot like the Blinding Light tech we talked about in the matchup.
It's a lot like Blinding Light. Marketh is going to have to be casting it a lot of time, and you're going to need that Shaman in your list in order to get it out with a range 10. But if you can get those Knight's Reflections out, you're going to have a good time just slowly attritioning.
And again... Steady stealth caster.
Steady stealth caster.
Yep.
So he's probably not going to die to Denny. And you might even just have a turn where Denny opens herself and you can go in.
Yeah. Hopefully not, but yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's scoring.
We have minions and mercs left.
Okay. Minions, again, Sacral Vault, great answer. Caliban specifically is a great answer. On his feet turn, he can open up with Bone Shakers and just turn into a fucking Gatling gun of RFPing models. So he's got Bone Shaker. His Sacral Vault's amazing. In the minion theme, you can take 2 Sacral Vaults and get just a whole bunch of free garbage.
Yeah.
Honorable mention for Jaga Jaga because her feat turns them into minion models, and then when they die, they're not in the units.
Yep.
So if you can grab the leader models or even the rifles, just the leader models, you can prevent them from being unit promoted, which is a big deal.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's a bit tricky sometimes to dig deep with that, but you've got access to things like Spitters or Scarith and Dahlia.
Yep.
Like those kind of things that can get at pieces.
And mercs?
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
so Constance Blaze has an RFP spell, and she's actually really, really strong at CRYX in general. I don't know if I want to play Constance Blaze in a pairing.
So Kane 3 maybe?
I don't know, man. What's the RFP?
The RFP is killing Denny.
It's not great.
No.
Charles probably played it the best I've seen. If you've seen the stream from the Southern Ontario Open Finals, you see Charles Sung playing Damiano. Really, really staggers a Kingmaker list with lots of infantry pieces well. And he just holds through the feat and manages to endure for a full round. Charles is a really excellent player. I genuinely believe that he was not favored in that matchup and that he did as well as he did in it because he's a very, very excellent player. I suspect a better player than me, if we're honest about it.
Modest. Last but not least, there's actually... Grimkin's not technically in War Room at the time of recording, but do you want to talk about them? Do you think that there's enough information
The
to
Heretic
talk about
doesn't
them?
have Hellfire. He has Gallows and Hexblast. So I actually don't know what my Grimkin solution to this problem is. I mean, yeah, I'm probably going to put a pause in the Grimkin notion until I've played more games of the Grimkin, because I will be probably playing them after the WTC, and I'll give you feedback then.
Totally fair. So guys, that's it for our mini-series on answers to Ghost Fleet. We hope you enjoyed it. We also would love it if you gave us some feedback on how we did for the mini-series and other things you might want to see if we want deep dives on stuff like Ghost Fleet, any specific casters. We'll probably not do a month of one caster, but we're willing to talk deep like this after our episodes of Battle Reports and things like that. And if you do like these after post-Battle Report discussions, we're definitely willing to do more of those. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.